Greetings! Welcome to the Sketchbook session. Today I'm working in pen and ink, my lovely and very much cherished microns, and I'll be working on drawing just some little critters. I've been enjoying the elementals and just these little creatures and characters, and so I'm going to be continuing on that. As you're tuning in, whether you are just listening or you're watching along, I hope that you're creating something as well. These funny little things are low stress and they're just good for the soul. I find myself creating a lot of these little creatures these days. I find them just to be kind of a low stress thing, and especially working with ink, which is comically unforgiving, I find that it's freeing for me to sit down and work with it. So I'll just start off by creating some lines. I knew for this first one that I wanted to work with something that was entish, like if there was a tiny little baby ent. And so I just started crafting a branch that came down and started to form out a little bit of a face. Immediately I noticed I was doing it from straight on because that's my go-to. It's easiest. I think when we learn how to draw people, when we learn how to draw a lot of animals, we tend to do things from straight on or from the side specifically. It's not great, but it's a good schema to start with, and it's something that we often do when we're learning how to do something the first time. I like these little guys because there's not a lot that I have to do with them. I have to communicate an element, some part of the form. Usually I have to give them some manner of personality. Most of the time recently I've just been using normal circular eyes. I haven't been trying to make them exasperated or struggling or happy or sad. I will probably start taking them more in that direction. It's just going to be more interesting, but as I'm getting more comfortable drawing, recording, painting, recording, I'm having to focus on simpler things, and then eventually I'll start moving on to some more complicated things. I was listening to another streamer slash YouTuber a couple days ago named Istebrak, who's been on the platform for a very, very long time, and I'll link her in the description down below. And she was talking about how streaming, how recording is really good for you artistically because it just puts you out there. You've got to think on the fly. You can't really recover from things. If something doesn't turn out well, people see that. And I think that's probably been a beneficial part of doing these kinds of sketchbook sessions is I don't have a lot of forgiveness. In fact, a couple of the first sketchbook sessions, I was really not happy with the drawings coming out the other side, but I realized that the conversation and discussions and just the words that were coming out of my mouth were making more sense than what it was logical to stop and re-record it. And that's not a very good way to say that, but what I mean is the benefits that were coming out of me talking through things in this long form content overpowered my lack of comfort, my discomfort with the way my art was turning out. So I decided to put those out there, and I'm really happy that there was a pretty decent quantity of support and encouragement that people got from that. And that's the whole goal with this. I do a lot of drawing and I do a lot of sketching that is not recorded, but I find that I benefit from watching other people put things together. I learn more sometimes just by watching somebody slowly sculpt out something. It is encouraging, I think, for a lot of people to see another artist struggle or succeed or fail. You learn a lot from these little snippets of things that are only recorded in the real time. Now, I got to see tons of this being in the classroom for ages, but nowadays, this is one of the only ways I get it. I still communicate with a lot of artists, and most of what's communicated is in-progress pieces and finished pieces, but even the in-progress pieces are just a tiny little snapshot. So watching other artists make things can be really beneficial. If you need to realize that you're not alone in the struggle, you're not alone in trying to figure out how something works, how something functions, then watching another person struggle with something is really beneficial. It helps you remember that you're human and they're human, and we're all kind of on the same field. You know, some of us have better equipment. Our parents were wealthier. They gave us, better pads for whatever sport we're metaphorically playing. But we're all human. We're all struggling and figuring this stuff out together. And so that's why I'm doing these. And whether they get a lot of views or not that many views, I know that I get one or two people each time that really benefit from them. And I know I've really benefited from some as well. So I'm going to keep doing these and hope that, whoever you are that is listening, you can get some snippet out of that. And I'm really curious. I'll have to start exploring and figuring out what ways there are to do this, but I want to see what you guys are putting together too. So I don't know if I can find a way to see what you're doing on an Instagram or something like that. Or at some point I will probably open up a Discord where people can share the pieces that they're working on at any particular moment. I know I would benefit from that, and a lot of the stuff that I'm doing on a daily or weekly basis, I could start putting in there. Because, the sketchbook sessions get a pretty good snapshot of the stuff I'm just randomly working on. But there's some other drawings that turn out really well, and it's like, dang it, I didn't record that. And then there's other things that's like, I'm kind of okay that I wasn't recording this. And I don't record a lot of my practice stuff. I'm still working on studying birds, and that's, I haven't uploaded any of that yet because it's kind of boring. I think I will. I mentioned this in one of the last sessions. I think I will put all of that collated into a single thing and be like, this is what it looks like or can look like to study something that you don't know how to do. Which again, I think it's really beneficial to watch other artists succeed and struggle with things. I love this little weird onion guy. He's just goofy. And these long legs remind me of this student that I had a long time ago. Not a student that had long legs, because that'd be awkward, but a student that I had who had a tendency to draw realistic animals like sharks and then put human legs on them with like stiletto heels and fishnets and things. It was so uncomfortable and awkward, but hilarious. And this little onion guy reminds me of that a little bit. So obviously I try to draw every day. I don't know that it's necessary or that it's beneficial to everyone to draw every day. I try to because I know that there's going to be some days where I can't, where it's just not going to work. And this last week and weekend, we had my daughter's 4th birthday, which was awesome and lovely. And it also consumed a lot of time. And there was 1 or 2 days in there where trying to find the time to do art was very difficult. And I knew that my art was going to compete with my downtime. And that might make me sound kind of lazy. And I'm okay with that. But the reality is we all need some detox time, and I'm quite introverted and I need this time to recover from social events. And so having a couple days of highly social events and then the stress that leads up to all of that and then the unwinding time that comes afterwards, I'm sitting there going like, okay, do I just sit down and play some video games and chill for an hour or two, or do I draw? And the last time I tried to force it, the last time I really pushed myself, my drawings did not turn out well, and it was really frustrating. And I ended up going to bed frustrated with my art, which hasn't happened in a long time. But sometimes that can happen when you force things. So should you draw every day? I think yes, if you can. If you can find a way to structure it into your life where you can draw every day, yes, absolutely do it. But my goal is more about 10 or 15 hours a week of making art. And I would like to amplify that and get that to 20 or 25 at some point. That might be ridiculous. I don't know. I have to start with the little goals. And so instead of having my goal be draw every day as my priority, my goal is really get as much time into drawing and painting over the course of the week as I possibly can. And that way, if I miss a day, then I'm still averaging out okay. So right now I'm doing probably, if I averaged it out, it's probably about 6.5 days a week that I draw. Which means every other week I miss 1 day. And I think that's okay. The minimum amount of time, I used to think and try to teach myself, not try to teach myself, but I used to try to convince myself that I needed to do 1 hour a day. And I think 1 hour a day is probably about best. I've heard from some other creators and artists and art teachers who are much more talented than me. Talent is such a loaded term. Who have much higher skill levels than I do. That about 1 hour of study time a day is kind of your minimum. And so that's what I tried to do. But again, that can be a lofty goal in some circumstances. So really my goal is about like, I just need to draw something each day. And if that means I only draw for 10 or 15 minutes, that's great. We all know though, when you sit down to draw and you don't have a whole lot of pressure, you're gonna draw more. And so yesterday things were super busy, but I sat down and I still managed to knock out about 40 minutes of drawing this dragon. And it's good. I'm glad that I spent that time. I just need to keep doing it. And that's why we focus on drawing every day. That's why you hear a lot about that, is because the more time that you spend in the medium, the more time you spend making things, the less chance you have at stagnation. Now, if you just continue to draw the same thing all the time, I don't know that you really grow, but you will stagnate and your skills will decay. So as long as you're drawing frequently, you're gonna hopefully stave off decay. And if you're lucky, you'll gain some skills. If you focus on things that you're bad at and continue to improve those, you will gain some skills. But, you have to keep putting time into the game. Otherwise, it's not going to turn out. You're not going to yield the results that you're looking for. And this third one did not turn out the way I wanted. I'm not sure what's going on. It's kind of looks like a rock and kind of looks like a critter. It's hard to tell what's going on. I like the first two though. I think that they came out pretty cute. And that third guy, it kind of feels like arms for legs. He's super, super awkward. Poor fellow. Poor fellow. So I guess the meat and potatoes of it is drawing every day is a great idea, and it's great if you can do it. But what's more important is to continue to put time into your art frequently. And if that's every day, awesome. And if you can only do a couple days a week, maybe try to make sure they're bigger sessions. But I think the biggest thing of all is just continue making and continue being in it. I know that my soul is in a better place. I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better human being if I'm drawing and painting frequently. If I don't feed that part of my soul, I'm not okay. And therefore, I'm not as good to the people around me, which is terrible. So if you are feeling down on yourself, you feel like you should be drawing more, maybe be a little bit gracious with yourself, but also try to push yourself into drawing some more and just give yourself that tiny little goal. Like my goal is just to get in 10 minutes a day. That should be maintainable for most human beings. And I think what you'll find out is that once you sit down with your sketchbook, your pens, your pencils, your tablet, you don't put just 10 minutes in, you put in more. And that's good. If your goal is 15 minutes and you put in 30, you won twice over. Well done. If your goal was a B, you just got an A that you didn't anticipate, and that feels great. And we need the feeling great. We need it. It's hard. Being an artist is hard sometimes. On a very unrelated note, I was thinking about art books. Partially because as I'm sitting here at my desk doing the editing of this at this moment and sketching and drawing, I've got a bookshelf that has a wonderful amount of art books on it. And I collect them, and I've realized recently that, for me at least, they are more like a collection than they are a group of classes. And I've started to think, I wonder how many other people do this. I've got several of Loish's sketchbooks. I've got one of Samwise's, who was one of the founding artists at Blizzard. I've got Trent Kaniuga, one of his Twilight Monk books. I've got stuff from John Howe and Alan Lee, who were the artists who did a ton of the concept art for the Lord of the Rings movies. And there's another Blizzard Entertainment one, a couple Monster Hunter. And then I've got a whole bunch of instructional ones. I've got a whole bunch of not how to draw books, but actually some of them literally say how to draw as I'm looking over there, and artist's anatomy for of animals and things like this. But anyway, most of these books are part of a collection. I like getting them. I love books, but I don't use them in the way that I think they would benefit me most. And I've started to think about this, and it's bugging me. And recently I have sat down and studied from a child's book on how does this artist draw his female protagonist. And I found that really benefited me. And that led to the conclusion, or at least the hypothesis, that I would probably benefit more from these art books by sitting down and copying the work out of them and analyzing it and trying to understand what makes it what it is. So these Loish sketchbooks, if you haven't heard of Loish, I'm surprised, but you should definitely go check her out. Wonderful artist who's done a lot of work over the years, some of which for Disney and there's this video game that I can't think of at this moment that she did some work for the main character, Horizon Zero Dawn. She did some work for the main character. I don't know if it was actually for that company specifically, but I think it was. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But I've got a couple of her books, and they're lovely. She does very wonderful, stylized versions of people, and her environmental storytelling is awesome. So I have these books. I look at them, and they're fun to look through. But what do they do for me? Well, not a whole lot, unless I sit down and I try to figure out, like, what is she doing when she draws a female face? How is she simplifying it? In what ways can I benefit from looking at how she does things? And I think maybe I've been missing that as an individual when it comes to all these art books. And so I've got a couple emotional responses to that. One is like, yay, this is exciting. I've got all these resources that I can use. The second is like, oh my goodness, why haven't I been doing this all along? Which, is really hard. I have a tendency to beat myself up for things that I should have or could have or would have done. And so those are kind of my two conflicted thought processes. And so I think I'm going to start working from some of those books and studying some of these other artists and how they break things down and how they do things. There's a lot to glean there. I was an art teacher for so long, and I went to formal art education, and there's such a focus in that world on having students always work from life. Like, you want to learn how to draw a rock, like, go look at rocks. And there is wisdom in that. But rocks are a lot simpler than people. And even though they are simpler, they're not simple. This rock elemental guy that I'm drawing right now is a product of looking at how other artists draw rocks, how they render them, how the darks and the lights are so close together. And that's one of the things that makes it really look like rock and stone. And in a future session, you'll get to see how I like shade this guy in with watercolor paint. Actually turns out pretty cool. So that's the thing, is I was taught, and I think a lot of artists are taught, hey, if you want to learn how to do something, you have to work from real life, or real life is the better way, or copying is an evil thing to do and it makes you less artistic in some capacity. And it's simply not true. So we can glean from these artists. I can glean from Loish how she simplifies human beings, and I can learn a lot in that process. And so I'm going to start doing that, I think. I don't know why it took me so long to realize that this is probably how these books ought to be being used. Maybe you guys have come to these conclusions earlier. Maybe you feel like I'm totally wrong. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. How do you use art books? What do you do with them? Do you collect any? What are some of your favorites? I've got a ton, and I do want to start doing, I don't really want to do book reviews. Like, this art book. But I would like to just be like, hey guys, I want to share a little bit of this book with you. It's wonderful. You should go buy it and support this author. Because some of these books are phenomenal. And some of them are not as personal. The Monster Hunter World art book, fantastic, but you can find a lot of that stuff online. But some of these other ones are just wonderful. Books that are produced by one specific artist and they just showcase that artist's work. I've got some wonderful ones that I do want to share with all of you guys at some point, and would like to encourage you guys to support those artists as well. Some of them are just wonderful, wonderful books. So, but yeah, I'm curious what you guys think about the art books. And so if you haven't already, please leave something in the comments below. What do you use art books for? Or do you use them at all? Do you gravitate towards how-to books? But I've got this massive collection. It's about time I start using them. I just like books too much. I've got way too many cookbooks too. Ugh, way too many cookbooks. But you can't have on any of them, and I'm not getting rid of any of them. I love them. Now, I mentioned a couple things there. One of the artists, Samwise, worked for Blizzard. Is obviously Blizzard Entertainment, a video game design company. And then the Monster Hunter art books as well. And this week, the week that this video is going live, is about 1 week after Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out. And so a lot of my downtime has been going into Tears of the Kingdom. It is a wonderful game, a wonderful experience. And of course, it has led me to be thinking recently about video games and art, which I've talked about several times on this channel. And at some point, maybe I'll do a nice formal video about it. But there's some real links. Oh, was not intending the pun, the Zelda pun of Link. There are some real links between art people that are creative, people that have artistic tendencies, and video games. And I think that we've seen this the last 20 years or so in education circles. The kids that are the anime nerds and the gamers, they're often the kids who draw a lot. And I don't know exactly what the link is, but I've got some ideas. I think kids and people that are drawn toward the creative storytelling of video games where you get to interact, you're a part of things. At the very least, you're going through the motions in a story, like the God of War games. Those stories are pretty set and you are living it out, but you're still interacting with it. It's way more interactive than sitting down and watching something. And in fact, it's more interactive than sitting down and reading a book, because in a book, the story is being read and uncovered by you, but it is only the story that is there. You can't read slowly and the bad guy wins. But in a video game, you can. Even in a video game where it's only story and there's no deviating, there's no decision making that you can make that alters anything, you can still fail. And I think that aspect is one of the things that ties in with artists. They like to have the ability to manipulate, to change, to alter things. There's some comfort with mistakes, some comfort with failing. Any video game you play nowadays, it seems, there's a capacity to fail. And art and all creative things all have this possibility and potentiality of failure. And so video games kind of tie in with that. And that's to say nothing of the fact that video games are beautiful and can be inspiring. How many of us started our art, not careers, but our art journeys off copying art from a video game? I remember drawing characters from Mega Man X growing up, or old Zelda games like Ocarina of Time, which was my first Zelda game. And my best friend growing up used to draw Sonic and Tails and Knuckles from the Sega series. Like, a lot of us got started drawing things from video games, and that's because the designs are simplified, they're easier to copy, they're entertaining, we like them, you tend to draw things that you like. A lot of my friends who were really into sports, what they drew? They drew the logos of the sports teams they really liked. So there's some link there, there's some link between video games and artistry. And as I've been diving into Tears of the Kingdom, which is the sequel to Breath of the Wild, which is another beautiful game, Tears of the Kingdom is beautiful. The color palette is wonderful. The music is immersive. It brings you in. It's so exciting. I've been enjoying it and soaking it up in a way that I haven't in ages. I don't remember the last video game that came out that I was this excited about. And obviously, I'm an adult. I have, all these things that I have to manage in my life. I am married, I've got a child, I've got a lot of responsibilities. But a couple years ago, I started taking a day off of work when I was still at the school teaching, when a video game came out, because life is short and video games are a wonderful thing to enjoy. And really, they're interactive entertainment. If you sit down and watch a TV show, that's worse on your brain than playing a video game. A video game is engaging in different ways. Reading a book is great and it's really engaging. And I think, honestly, though a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this, I think that video games and books are basically the same for your brain as far as quality of engagement. In a book, you have the potentiality of learning some new things and you're going along on a story with the protagonists and antagonists and the main characters. But in a video game, you're doing all of that. You're doing it with fine motor skills on your hands, your decision making in your brain about what you're doing. So you're following around a storyline and characters, but you're also making decisions. You're also engaging in some physical manner, though it's minimal. It's still more than reading. And, it's interactive. It's good for your brain, especially Zelda games. Like there's puzzles and there's engineering and you have to think about the physics and how I don't have to do any of that when I read a book. And not all books are equal. Like I could be rereading Lord of the Rings. I could finally read the Silmarillion and I could get some Dostoevsky. I could finally read Tolstoy's War and Peace. But most reading isn't that. If I pick up with where I left off in the second Harry Potter book, like that's that's candy. It's not a nutritious meal, and it's fine. Candy's great, but it's not like sitting down for a steak dinner, which is really, really nutritious and also delicious. Like that would be reading Tolstoy. And video games are like that too. Like video games are not unequivocally worse than reading a book. There are books that you could read that would be worse for your brain than playing Zelda. And frankly, playing Zelda forces you to think. You have to process and wrap your head around things. And yeah, I can't recommend the game enough. If you haven't played it, if you have a Switch, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you get the game. But for artists in general, I feel like we are drawn to video games. There's so much creativity in them. A lot of us grew up fantasizing about working in that industry, and I still would be lying if I said that I don't have a desire to do that at some point in my life. At some point, if I got that opportunity, I would be ecstatic. It would be wonderful. I don't have the skills yet, but that's why I'm here. Maybe that's why you're here. That's why I'm working and why I'm working through things. And most of my skills over the years are really in evaluating, in critiquing, and in helping other people grow. And so it's this weird part of my journey now where I'm working on helping myself grow. But they pull us in that way, and they create a world that is totally different from our own world. And it's wonderful. And it's magical. It's the same reason people love books. It's the same reason people loved Game of Thrones. It's a world that is different from ours, that we can get into, that we can enjoy. So, yeah, to all the naysayers about video games and how bad video games are, no, they're not. No, that's an old argument. It's an old argument. They are a form of entertainment. They are a form of downtime for many, many, many people. And they are not worse than watching football. They are not worse than reading a novel. They are not worse than watching soap operas. At the very least, they are on the same level. But I would wager and argue that in a lot of ways, video games are better. Better for you as a human, better for you for your brain and your development. Especially so many kids that play things like Minecraft these days. Sandbox games where there's things that you can do. They force you to think. They force you to problem solve. Those are better skills. Better skills than you will get in a lot of other situations. Those skills will transfer to your workplace. So yeah, I think that a lot of the crap that video games have gotten over the years is silly. Is really shows a lack of thought and a lack of research, or maybe just the human desire to blame things on something else, which again is very, very innately human. Man, this guy's turning out a little weird, isn't he? I think I was going for another rock elemental type of critter, but I didn't plan out particularly well and just started crafting out these shapes, and weirdness happened. I am happy to say, though, when I did paint this guy later, it did turn out a lot better. But some of these are just strange. But I think it's a good subset of how my drawings often go. On this page right now, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So right now there's 10 of these little guys, and like 2 of them are weird and don't really work. And that's probably about right. Probably, 8 out of 10. So 80% of my drawings turn out 80% of my drawings turn out 80% of the way that I wanted them to. I'm gonna keep working, keep trying to push those percentages to a better place, because obviously I want more of my drawings to turn out the way that I want. But sometimes you just got to be okay. And this is going back to the point earlier about drawing every day. This is one of the really good reasons to draw frequently. Is it helps you to remember and to understand truly that not every drawing or painting is going to turn out well. And this is why it's good to sketch. Like if you are a painter or you are a digital artist who does large scale things, don't always do large scale things. Do small things sometimes, because if you put 40 hours into a piece, that's pretty extreme for most people. Let's just say you put 5 to 10 hours into your average piece. If you have one piece that goes poorly, that might be the only piece you worked on that week. And it feels like that whole week is lost. It feels like you failed and that whole week sucks now. And I would encourage you, if that's you, if you do one large project at a time, like work on multiple projects simultaneously, or work on little sketches here and there, and sketch things that are easy for you. So if you get to the end of a week and you finish your painting and you hate it, it's awful, it's the worst thing you've ever seen, but you also filled a couple pages in your sketchbook with funny little cute drawings from a TV show that you like, or just from your brain, the whole week's not a wash. And truly, just to be clear for a second, even if you failed that painting and it really is bad, it's not just you being too hard on yourself, that's not a wash anyway, because you have to fail. Like you build your successes on a mountain of little cobblestones that are all failures. And so even if that week, that piece, all your pieces failed, it's still not a wash. You're still growing, you're still improving, you still have those failures behind you. You figured out how to not succeed, and that gives you a clearer image of how to succeed later. But I would encourage you to work on small things. These little goofy guys are my small things, and this is the 11th one I'm putting on this page right now. And 2 of them I'm not happy with, and one of them is like, that's okay, I guess. But there are some on here that I really like. The guy that is right above this one on the left that looks a little bit like he's made of ice. Like, I like the shape language there. I like the 3 eyes. I like the tentacle things. The little snowball guy up top, like, he's more fun, And the onion guy with the long, legs that are awkward, like that. Even the rock guy in the center, the shading, I like the way that I've handled that. The wooden guy, he isn't great, but he's interesting. The little slime guy, it's important. It's important to have some little wins, and enough little wins make up for a loss. They don't make it so that the loss didn't exist, but they can be a good reminder in your brain that you aren't always failing, that you aren't a failure, that you are just a human being who had a piece that didn't go well. Welcome to being human. Welcome to being an artist. Like, not everything is going to go the way that you want it to all the time. And isn't that why we do this? Because if we knew that we were always going to succeed, it would make the successes. I would still do it. Not just to be clear. If I knew that I was going to succeed, I'd probably do it more. But my successes wouldn't have the flavor that they do. They wouldn't feel as good because there wasn't a risk. And the risk makes it more valuable when we succeed. It makes our successes feel better. So I don't want to glorify failure, but because failure is an unavoidable component, an unavoidable part of our artistic journeys, we might as well find a way to live with it. We might as well find a way to frame it so that it isn't torturous, so that it's not something that agitates us. It's inevitable. It's going to be there. Look at this guy. He looks weird. What are these, like, lightning tentacles coming out of an ent with a beard who has no body? Yeah, I don't know if this guy's a failure or a success. I can tell, though, like, I'm getting tired because I'm just like, I don't want to make limbs that make sense, that have articulating points. I'm just gonna do lightning ink things. This will be fine. Well, I'm starting to wrap up here, so thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. It's lovely to have you with me creating things, paying attention to my rambles. I hope there was some benefits today in some of these things I talked about. I hope that you're excited to play Tears of the Kingdom if you have the ability to do so. It's been a wonderful experience for me so far. And yeah, if you liked the video, please like it and consider subscribing. I really appreciate it. It benefits the channel. It benefits me a lot. channel's still young, and things are going decently well, but I would love for the content to reach more people, because there are a lot of people that, can benefit from some of these things. I know I do. I still listen to a lot of other artists as they're working through their stuff, so hopefully I can say that without any hubris and without any pride. Just, I know that these kind of discussions and ramblings are beneficial to some people, and hopefully you're one of them. So thanks for tagging along. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.